Hello, everybody. Welcome to Cloud Wars Live. We're digging into the digital revolution, and it has touched all facets of our lives, personal, professional, and it's interesting to see, too, in the world of education. We're going to have the great experience today to talk to the Chief Financial Officer from Washington State University, Stacy Pearson. Stacy, welcome to Cloud Wars Live. It's a pleasure to have you.
Hello, Bob. Thank you. I'm pleased to be here.
Stacy, gosh, for everybody, the last, 20, 21 months have been, I think disruption is a little bit of an understatement, but, Chief Financial Officer at a major university, it has to have sort of turned your world upside down. So I wonder if we could just start by telling us what's been going on and, how have you dealt with that? And boy, what a different world we're in today, huh?
Oh, it really is. I still remember the day when it kind of occurred to us that, my goodness, we are heading into spring break and we have told students that they cannot return to campus. And from that moment on, we had various committees and task force, assigned to making decisions, to dealing with what needed to be dealt with on the next day. This went on, honestly, for months. I remember our president being pretty hopeful that, okay, we might have to move graduation maybe to August of 2020, and us having to give him the bad news that this is just not going to be happening. So just every aspect of what we were doing, but mainly trying to take care of our students. That's really where we spend a lot of time, and then setting up testing programs and all sorts of things. So yeah, it certainly wasn't something that was on my planning horizon, and it really, I think, stretched all of us. But I'm actually, just looking back on those last 20 months or so, really proud of how we did. And, there were days we said, oh, this is a disaster, we've handled this horribly. And then the next day we were a hero because, something else happened. So we just learned to just work through it, breathe through it, and just keep on. Let's just take on the next challenge, deal with that, and with the best information that we have, and move on.
Well, Stacy, in very stressful times, that sounds like a wonderful approach to take. And, I think it's fascinating too, across all sorts of businesses in higher education. In different ways, we've heard people say, similar things, that there were days, you thought, oh my gosh, this is the worst thing ever. And then other days it was like, you know what, we're starting to think about things differently. So I wonder, Stacy, could you talk about maybe lean in a little bit more to what you said a moment ago about the sort of the good things you learned about what was going on and how you've rolled those forward into the way the university operates today?
Well, sure. So one thing, to remember is that we deal with a lot of decisions, a lot of issues that we need to move forward, like we were in the midst of implementing a new information system. But what we were dealing with here was more life and death issues, right? That we had to make decisions that kept people safe. So this was well beyond a lot of those, other decisions that we have to make. And so, in a sense, dealing with those very serious issues of keeping students safe, keeping faculty and staff safe, when we started dealing with how are we going to operate in a way that was a little bit of a relief. Now, maybe my colleagues won't agree with me, but it was like, oh, okay, well, I can think about this because I'm not worried that, we're going to make a decision that's going to have, some, horrible outcomes or something. So it helped in a way. And then I think also we really needed to listen to our employees, our faculty, our staff. We needed to listen to our students. We have campuses in rural areas in the West in general, lots of rural areas. So how are we going to deliver these programs remotely? So, purchasing hotspots, sending Chrome laptops out to everybody. This is something many of the institutions do. So I don't want to sound like we were unique there, but, basically telling people in some rural areas, if you go to the parking lot of our extension center, you will have Wi-Fi with your hotspot. Now, think about that. Do you want to sit in your car and take your class? Probably not. I mean, this was not ideal, but it was still trying to deliver.
Yeah. And that adaptability, Stacy, it sounds like something that was a great skill to have. And at the same time, whether it's a university or a business, you've got to have some processes sort of locked down. You got to know, okay, we can plan, we can pay
Mhm.
people, we can set schedules, we can be very rigorous about this. What's the role that perhaps, technology has played in helping post-pandemic you to be able to get all this stuff locked down nicely? I,
Well,
I
I
should have
think
used the term lockdown. I'm sorry. Let
oh
me,
yeah, I understood what you meant,
yeah.
but yeah, and I think it made a huge amount. I was going to say all the difference in the world, but in a way, yes, because how we could communicate and how we could continue. I mean, I want you to think back to when you or your children were in college and this had happened. Would they have been able to attend school at all?
Mhm.
Right? I mean, just think of the magnitude of that, or the idea of you working remotely. I mean, it just wasn't possible. The interesting thing for us is we had just transitioned to Zoom for our large system-wide meetings, maybe 6 weeks before. Well, maybe a little bit longer that, because we were just saying, hey, this isn't a great experience for everybody, because we're viewing one conference room, and those people who are remote are looking at the backs of other people's heads and all of that. So somebody said, hey, these Zoom technologies, Microsoft Teams, this is the way to go. So we literally had just transitioned to that. And like I said, it made a huge difference, because we had to be in constant contact as we went into the pandemic and make plans. And, I just think back to, even a decade ago, how would we have done this?
Yeah. And even, I think, Stacey, I've heard some people talk about this, some folks that study IT organizations and all that. And if somebody had said to you, we need to switch before the pandemic, we need to switch everybody in the organization to remote work and equipment to work from anywhere and so on. It looks like from some of the studies done that the general answer would have said this will take 9 to 12 months, and this will consume, 25 to 30% of our budget.
Oh
Um,
yeah, yeah.
so it's fascinating here you describe this. It almost sounds like, in addition to achieving the safety of the entire community, right, from administration, faculty, students, and others, to setting up these technology capabilities from your big campuses, your remote campuses, where everybody could connect online. And then also, it seems, Stacy, you've talked about this a little bit, the mindset about what's possible here and what could be done. That seems like, a really powerful lesson that's come out of this.
Yeah, and I think what it teaches us, or has taught us, is we might be we might be more able to respond more quickly, a little more nimble than we really thought we were. And again, a lot of that, particularly no, not particularly in my industry, I'll just speak about mine, because we are a state public institution, is, well, there's these rules about what you can do and what you can't do, and how can you move ahead and make sure that you don't want to be out of compliance, but this is an emergency situation. And so that was a lot of the decision making, is, well, can we do this? Well, let's think this through. If we want to keep the organization operating, if we want to continue signing contracts and things, yes, we're going to have to get used to digital signatures and DocuServe and all of those. And where we used to have oh, well, we can do certain documents this way but not others, and it wasn't really clear as to why. Well, that we just said, this is a valid legal signature. We've checked with the AG's office. Move. We're just doing it.
Yeah, move. That seemed to be the idea in a lot of places. And so, Stacy, as the chief financial officer, it sounds like you have been more than a little bit involved in some technology decisions at the university.
Yes, in fact, when I came to Washington State University, one of the big issues, and one of the reasons for I think my hire was that they wanted to implement a new cloud-based system, needed to move from a 40-year-old mainframe accounting and HR system to the cloud. And since I'd had that experience, they wanted, to bring me in to do that. And of course, my thought was, do I really want to do this again? But what fascinated me, I have to say this, is in my previous position, we went from mainframe to client server to cloud. Well, here I was like, maybe it's actually much more effective to go directly from mainframe to cloud, because you get to miss all of those customizations that people promised back with client server days. And then I did another major project to get those customizations out so we could upgrade the product. Well, that was a big lesson learned, right? And these new cloud products, they don't let you do all of those customizations. So in a way, I had this curiosity to see, wouldn't this actually be easier and less costly? I think the other side of that, though, that we've experienced is the change is so vast. It's really that whole change management was much more prevalent in our implementation here at Washington State than it was for me before. And that those were the tough lessons we all learned before, was you've got to understand what this does to your workforce when you really moved their cheese, right, on these new systems. So we actually spent more time on change management and engaging across the campuses than I did in those previous projects.
Yeah, and I think, Stacy, that's a great point. It reflects what I think a lot of organizations are going through when they hear these things about, oh, we're going to make a new, deploy some new technology. That the mindset in a lot of places, well, that's a technology project. Well, no, it isn't. It's something that has a larger goal in place, and the technology allows then that goal to be achieved. So I wonder if that is that something that maybe at Washington State University people understand here more, that, right? Because in some cases where they try to say, oh, that's a tech thing, I don't have to get involved in it. But no, it's a process, workflow, mission, and how we do things better here project.
Oh, very much so. I mean, even though we talked about that a lot in the beginning of the project, until you actually live it, you don't really know. And I would say our staffs, our deans, people all over the organization, faculty, they now get what we mean, that this is a big change in how they do their daily work, and, both the frustrations and the positives. I mean, immediately people were impacted by the fact that you did all of your leave reporting online. I mean, when I first came to WSU and I said, hey, I'd like to check out leave balances for my staff. And I was waiting, I was at my computer looking for the screen, and I heard a big thud, and I turned around and somebody had dropped a box on my desk and said, yeah, here it is. And I was like, what? You paper leave slips? So that immediacy of, oh, look, I can go in, I can put my leave in, my supervisor can approve it. And of course, we got the first thing right, and you know what that is. Everybody got paid, right? Everybody got paid. I told people, I said, it doesn't matter what else we do, right or wrong, but those first paychecks have to be correct and all of that. And I'm not going to say that they were 100% people had to, but for the most part. And so I think that the campus immediately felt that benefit of, oh, this is great. I can look at my leave balances. I can, approve, blah, blah, blah. But then it's all of those other things that, like, wait a minute, you mean I have to do this? Because it's so different than the way I was doing it before, particularly on the accounting side, how to set up a grant. And here's the thing, systems like Workday require preciseness, right? You have to put in the right account code. You have to put in, the right parameters. And I think with that older system, there was always somebody along the way who would correct it for you, who, you would eventually get it right, not so this way. It wasn't going to let that transaction move forward without the, having that clarity of detail.
But it's interesting. You mentioned that, Stacy. The last time I spoke to one of the founders of Workday, Neil Bussery, one of the things he was saying was one of his new priorities was user interface. He said, so many people in business think, or they become accustomed to saying, okay, the new user interface is less bad than the old one. And he said that was okay for a while. He said, but now in our personal lives, we're used to these dazzling, fun, enjoyable experiences we have. And then in the professional setting, we don't want to go back to all right, it's not as bad as it used to be. So that's got to be something that the precision on the one end, but the delight and the dazzling experience on the other end, it's a remarkable combination.
Well, it really is. And you make such a good point, is most of us bank online, right?
Yeah.
We make our airline reservations online. So it's just translating that to say, why shouldn't everything that we do at work be that way, where I can follow my transaction? I mean, we still have the discussions about, well, the reason you don't have your transaction complete is it's on so-and-so's desk, right? The good old, it's on so-and-so's desk, right? And then there's the, let's go chase down the paperwork and all of that. Well, here you can click on and say, yeah, it's right there. It's in your queue. You're the one who has to approve it. I can follow that transaction around. And so all of a sudden there's just accountability everywhere. And it's not so much a central office function to make sure everything is correct. And that's been one of the toughest things to say, the preciseness, the accuracy of the transaction starts with the people who know the business side of what is going on. When you're out in a college and you're setting up a grant, those are the people who have that information, and then the transaction flows through and goes through all of its checks and balances. Well, that was change, not for everyone, but for a lot of people. And it's been fascinating to me to watch, both here at Washington State and at my prior institution, how over time there were people who just really embraced this new system, just couldn't wait. Oh, look at this is great. And others who have said, I just can't do my job. I just can't find where anything is. And I'm not saying that the system's perfect, because we are still in stabilization at WSU, and will be. We've moved stabilization to be about 1.5 years post go live, because we went live with both HR and finance. So we're digging through and finding all sorts of things that can be improved. But a lot of it is also just getting people comfortable with, this is how a transaction goes in, and this is what is required for it to move forward. So everything from house calls to online training, to the things that we need to help people get through this, again challenged by the pandemic, because we aren't really for a long time we weren't really going out to help somebody through a transaction. We were jumping on a Zoom, we were kind of troubleshooting, that type of thing.
Yeah.
So we were implementing a new system and learning a new way to work at the same time.
And it sounds like, Stacy, for you were you've done some of it before, but the traditional CFO role it sounds like, at least in your case, is quite different, right? On the one hand, you're fairly involved with now technology strategy, if not, right, having to be the person who understands all the specifics of the stuff. But is this the right tool to achieve the outcomes we want down the road? And then also, so if it was finance and HR, are you having more interactions with the HR team at Washington State?
Oh, absolutely. Because we worked on this together. We basically did the full project as a big team, and so I was as much involved in the human resources side as I was finance, but I had 2 key leaders for each of those areas. And I will let you know, I'm the executive sponsor of the project. So it is both the technology side, running the steering committee meetings and overseeing the project is in my purview, yes.
So you've had some, quasi-CIO, quasi-CHRO experience. You've been through this pandemic. You've got new systems there, new ways of looking at things, new experiences for people all across the campus. What's the What's the future role of CFOs, Stacy, if you look at just some of this over the last year and a half, and then in general, moving forward, how is that going to play out for CFOs, whether in higher ed or in other parts of the economy?
Well, I would just say if they weren't before, CFOs are truly the strategic partners of the university. It's and it's not just in the area of finance and administration, but these silos, they're having to be broken down because we are very reliant on each other. I mentioned I was the executive sponsor. There is no way we would have been successful without the knowledge and expertise of our chief information officer and his team, our chief human resources officer and her team, and in finance and administration. I mean, the way I kind of put it is I help keep the trains on time. I get resources. I do the presentations up to executive level and with our regents. But I am not the doer. I am completely reliant on the expertise of these folks. And then we had a very good steering committee also. So this idea that we will be in that role of helping make these big strategic decisions. And I might deal with the budget side of it. I might help deal with the technology side of it. I'm certainly going to be involved in the personnel and human resources side of it, not because I'm knowing all of that, but because they're all so interrelated and so interdependent.
Yeah, yeah. I think, what you just said there, Stacey, gosh, I've heard that so much more and more, that any sort of organization, university, a business, whatever it might be, that there were these silos that developed over time in how they operated, right? And you'd have a little bit of an idea what goes on in the department next year's, very little idea, 2 steps out, but that more and more as either the customer experience and the employee experience becomes so central to the success of organizations, we got to have those end-to-end views. So I think you just
Absolutely.
captured that really nicely there. That seems like it's something that a university really has to master today.
Well, and for many reasons. So technology is just one of those, but I'm sure that you've had discussions about the great enrollment cliff of, is it 2025 or 2026, when there will be fewer 18-year-olds in the United States and declining from there due to lower birth rates in the 80s and the 90s. So for many reasons, and we talk about this on my campus, is, hey, we're basically preparing right now for that enrollment cliff because we did have a decline in enrollments over the pandemic, and we're having to change our approach and how we're going to recruit and retain students. And students are letting us know what their expectations are.
Yeah. Can I ask you, Stacey, related to that, is we chatted just before we began the recording, you were talking about a difference in the mindset between that experience that students want, right? You'd say, hey, our offices are open from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. so that you can come in across that, what is that, 9-hour area, but that's not how the students were looking at it, right?
Right. When we heard from our students, it was, well, I would like to do these transactions online, and I'd like to be able to do them at 11 p.m. or 2 a.m. And we thought to ourselves, oh, so you want to talk to somebody at 11 p.m. or 2? Well, not necessarily, but they'd like to have access to the tools, and then would like to know that somebody might be on call at that, at that point in time. And so it really, we were so anxious to get back in person, certainly for the academic side for the classes, but what we were, and for the in-person experience for our students, but we were hearing from them, would you just make a lot more of this accessible to us so we can do it in our, on our own and in our own rooms, because they too were concerned about, exposure and all of that, but they just wanted to have that flexibility. And so this is where they really taught us what it was they would really like.
Yeah. And as Stacey, as we, start to wrap up here a little bit, I just want to be sure to get your thoughts on a couple of high level views. One is, could you talk a little bit about where you see the higher ed industry going, right? It's both some challenges and opportunities. You mentioned the enrollment cliff, and then also your role of CFO. What is this modern role of the CFO, right? So from industry to your profession.
Yes. Well, I think higher education, I was going to say we're in for a lot of change. We're already in the midst of it. I don't think there's anybody who would deny that. I have to say, when I went to the last time I went to an in-person conference, I think that was a while ago. Um, and the big topic was mergers and acquisitions. Well, I remembered that back from my education process about mergers and acquisitions, but certainly hadn't heard about it in higher ed so much. And not that I think that that's anything that Washington State is looking at, but there are a lot of institutions where, and honestly, we're looking at our community college partners and saying, how can we integrate this? And I think that institutions will work more and more with those partners to see how can you create that full educational experience for these students, because I think that the flexibility that students want, and frankly, right now they may be place bound for a certain reason, but should that inhibit them from moving from a community college program to a university program and on, I think we have to pay a lot of attention to all of those dynamics. And we have to it's not just the silos within the institution, but it's the silos within our industry as a whole that we've got the online providers already. Our students aren't going to want to go say, oh, good, I'm glad you're back in person. We don't want to sign up for any more online classes. Quite the contrary. They want the whole gamut. I want to be able to attend in person. I want to be able to take these online classes. A particular challenge we're dealing with at my institution is I want to be able to enroll for any class at any campus within the system and not have inhibitions or, have challenges because, oh, well, and this is something that's been heard before, the budget model doesn't support this. Well, we have to take care of that. We have to have the type of processes and systems in place that enable that. And that's what will help us attract students, is that they say, hey, I can get everything done that I need to get done here. The competition is fierce. I was walking in downtown Seattle some time ago, and I looked up, there was this nice building. I looked up and it said Northeastern University. That's my point, is Washington is a state that will probably have a higher graduation number of 18-year-olds during that enrollment cliff period. So people are setting up shop here to help, to recruit students. So where we may have been accustomed being the land grant university that students pretty much came to WSU, that maybe certainly there were recruitment efforts, but they're going to definitely have to intensify and expand as we move forward.
Yeah. And then for you, Stacy, as CFO, that presents, I guess some people would call them challenges, opportunities, but it's got to be a pretty exciting adventure coming up for you here. That sounds like a very different world to move into, and a lot of things to figure out and to get those right.
Well, it is, but really what the role is, again, not just strategic partner, but when I first came to WSU, my role wasn't involved in enrollment management at all. And in fact, there were others who weren't involved, who I said, hey, we really need to focus on strategic enrollment management. And that is going to involve people, well outside of the enrollment management department, because we've got to think about how we recruit, strategies for, for financial aid and things like that. And so, I need to be well-versed in enrollment management strategies, as much as in what are our research goals, what are our protocols, like you said, human resources, international programs. I mean, I'm involved in all of those things, and I think the CFO of the future will be more so. It isn't you are the days of us being, maybe accountants and doing the budget and running maybe the facilities and some of those areas are really gone. I mean, that's part of our portfolio, obviously, but at the CFO level, you have to be very, very involved. Everything's going to involve money. It's all going to involve technology, high-level decisions about impacts, the need for data analysis and all of that. So I think it's very exciting, actually. And I think that it's a welcome change that those silos will be broken down, not just for the CFO, but for other leaders at the campuses.
Yeah, and Stacy, from some of the things you've said in this conversation, that when the silos go away, it isn't just that they go away and nothing else changes. Where you see things that you never saw before, you have access to things that were unavailable for you. You have collaboration opportunities that weren't possible before, and there's sort of a collective increased focus that can be placed on things like enrollment or like student life. Where's the mission? You get more people being able to think about things in different ways, and I think that that's in any sort of a business, any sort of big organization like Washington State University, that I think opens up the door to new ways of thinking, new possibilities of where you go in what are clearly some challenging times, right? As you talked about the enrollment cliff, and imagine trying to attack that with the old ways that things were run, where nobody except the people in that specific niche were looking at it, and now you can apply all that brain power and teamwork across the leadership of the university to try to get that right. That I see why you say it's such an exciting future.
Well, it is. And also, I'm thinking a lot about career path, how we attract people to the industry, staff to our industry. And it should be a lot more exciting and dynamic career path, that we would welcome somebody coming into the finance office who had been out at a college or who had worked in student affairs, that those skill sets are going to be more important to us, as we evolve as campuses, to not, you're not just coming in because the budget, that we really are encouraging our staff and across the campuses to really engage in the different aspects of the university. I think that's as much as breaking down the silos as it is, just the collaborations across units. But it's really charting out a career path to say, you might come in and work for a college, you might come and work in central services for a while. Maybe you're going to go to the research office and you're going to build a portfolio that's going to enable you to become the next CFO because you have that broad campus experience.
Well, Stacy, it's been a terrific conversation. Thank you. I wondered if there's anything that you wanted to add before we wrap up.
Oh, I appreciate that. I appreciate this conversation because, I was going merrily along prior to the pandemic thinking, hey, we're really doing this. We're achieving these goals. We did a 3-year fiscal recovery program at WSU. We were headed for a successful go live, and then on Workday, and then the pandemic hit, and it really just upended things. But again, it gave us this opportunity to test on a daily basis. How about this? How about that? And I think that in the long term, this is going to really be a positive impact on our industry and probably organizations worldwide, making us more adaptive, making us more collaborative because of that interdependency and reliance that we're going to have. So I actually see a lot more positive for the future, and this given this opportunity to learn. Maybe we wouldn't have, picked, but that we can take advantage of that, has really enabled us to make some of these positive changes.
I love that outlook, Stacy. Thank you. This has been a great conversation. Want to be sure to thank all of you for being with us here on this episode of Cloud Wars Live, and our friends at Workday for connecting you and me together, Stacy, and also sponsoring this episode. So thank you so much. It's been terrific.
Well, thank you. I've really enjoyed the discussion, and I really appreciate the opportunity that you gave me for this. Thank you.
Absolutely. All right. Stacy, thanks so much. Thanks to all of you folks. We'll see you soon.